The most powerful people in the world are often the ones nobody recognizes. Marcus Reynolds stood quietly in a small coastal town parking lot, wearing a simple jacket, holding a cup of coffee, and enjoying a rare day away from the responsibilities that had defined his entire life. To anyone passing by, he looked like an ordinary man taking a peaceful morning break. There was nothing on his appearance that revealed the decades of service, sacrifice, and leadership hidden beneath the surface. No military uniform, no official vehicle, no visible signs of the rank he carried. Just a man enjoying a quiet moment after years of serving his country. But Marcus Reynolds was not an ordinary man. He was a United States Navy 4-star Admiral, a leader who had spent decades making decisions that affected thousands of people and represented the highest levels of military service. Yet, on that morning, he was not thinking about titles or recognition. He was simply enjoying the freedom of being anonymous for a few hours. Marcus had always believed that character mattered more than symbols. A uniform could show a position, but it could not define a person. A title could open doors, but it could never replace integrity. Those lessons had followed him throughout his career. He had learned that true leadership was not about being noticed. It was about remaining responsible even when nobody was watching. A few miles away, Officer Daniel Brooks was beginning his shift. After many years in law enforcement, Daniel believed strongly in awareness and preparation. His job required him to pay attention to details, evaluate situations carefully, and protect the community he served. Like many officers, he understood that every interaction carried responsibility. That morning appeared to be completely normal. Traffic moved along the nearby highway. Customers stopped at local businesses. People continued their daily routines without knowing that an unexpected encounter was about to create a lesson that would reach far beyond that parking lot. Marcus never expected anyone to know his identity that day. In fact, he preferred it that way. He wanted to experience everyday life without the attention that came with his position. He wanted to be treated like any other person, not because he lacked importance, but because he believed every person deserved respect before their achievements were discovered. As Daniel approached the area, neither man knew how much their lives would intersect in the next few moments. One carried a badge that represented public authority. The other carried a lifetime of service that remained hidden from view. At that moment, only appearances were visible. The truth was still waiting. And sometimes, the greatest lessons begin when people discover that what they see is only a small part of the real story. Officer Daniel Brooks had spent years learning that every situation carried a story that was not always visible at first glance. His training taught him to observe carefully, ask questions, and understand the details before reaching conclusions. On that morning, he moved through his routine with the same focus he had brought to countless days before. The streets were calm, the weather was clear, and nothing suggested that an ordinary moment was about to challenge the way he viewed responsibility. Across town, Marcus Reynolds continued enjoying his rare time away from the demands of military leadership. For most of his career, Marcus had lived with constant responsibility. Every decision, every meeting, and every order required discipline and careful judgment. But away from his official duties, he valued simple moments. He enjoyed conversations with everyday people, quiet mornings, and the ability to move through the world without everyone knowing his position. Marcus believed that anonymity could reveal something important. When people did not know his rank, they interacted with him based on who he truly was rather than what his title represented. That belief had shaped his entire approach to leadership. He wanted to know how people were treated when there were no special introductions and no expectations attached to his name. Daniel, meanwhile, approached his work with confidence built from experience. He believed that authority came with a responsibility to protect public trust. A badge was not simply a symbol of power. It was a promise to serve with fairness and professionalism. Yet like every person, Daniel was still human. He understood procedures and policies, but he also knew that every decision involved judgment. The difference between a quick assumption and a thoughtful evaluation could change the outcome of any encounter. As the day continued, the paths of these two men moved closer together. One was a highly respected military leader whose accomplishments remained hidden. The other was a police officer who represented local authority and public service. Neither man knew the complete story of the person standing nearby. Marcus did not expect special treatment. Daniel did not know there was anything unusual about the person he would soon encounter. To everyone watching from the outside, it appeared to be a simple interaction between two strangers. But beneath that ordinary appearance was a deeper question about perception. How often do people judge a situation before knowing the full truth? How often does a person's appearance become the first thing others notice before their character has a chance to speak? Marcus had spent a lifetime proving himself through actions, not announcements. Daniel had spent a lifetime believing in the importance of doing his job correctly. Both men valued responsibility, but they were about to discover that responsibility also required understanding what could not immediately be seen. The moment that followed would not be remembered because of power or position. It would be remembered because it revealed a lesson that extended far beyond one conversation. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody recognizes. Marcus Reynolds had always understood that the greatest measure of leadership was not found in the moments when everyone was watching. It was found in the quiet moments when there was no audience, no recognition, and no expectation of praise. Throughout his decades of military service, Marcus had learned that responsibility was not a privilege reserved for important titles. It was a commitment carried every single day. Long before becoming a four-star admiral, Marcus was simply a person who wanted to serve something greater than himself. His journey was built through years of dedication, difficult decisions, and a belief that trust had to be earned through actions. He never forgot the lessons from the early days of his career, when he was just another officer learning what true service meant. Those experiences shaped the leader he became. Marcus knew that rank could open doors, but character was what allowed people to walk through them with respect. Even after reaching one of the highest positions in the United States military, he never wanted people to treat him differently simply because of a title. That was why days away from official duties mattered so much to him. They reminded him that behind every uniform and every position was a human being with ordinary experiences. For Marcus, stepping away from the spotlight was not about escaping responsibility. It was about remembering the people he served. Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Brooks continued his own routine, carrying the responsibilities of local law enforcement. He had built his career around attention, awareness, and the belief that preparation could prevent problems before they grew. Daniel respected the importance of his role and understood that people expected fairness from those who carried authority. Every interaction represented more than a single moment. It represented the relationship between a community and the people trusted to serve it. As Marcus and Daniel moved closer to their unexpected encounter, neither man realized how much they would learn from each other. Marcus carried a lifetime of leadership that remained invisible to those around him. Daniel carried the responsibility of making decisions based on what he could observe in front of him. Their worlds were different, but both men believed they were doing their duty. The difference was that one man's experience was impossible to see at first glance. Marcus had spent years commanding teams, solving complex challenges, and representing the nation with honor. Yet, on this particular day, none of that was visible. He was simply a man standing in a public place, enjoying a peaceful moment. That was exactly how he preferred it. He wanted to understand how people interacted when they did not know his position. He wanted to see the world without the influence of his title. Because Marcus believed something powerful. Respect should never begin after someone discovers your achievements. It should begin the moment they recognize your humanity. And soon, that belief would be tested in a way neither Marcus nor Daniel could have predicted. The afternoon remained calm as Marcus Reynolds continued enjoying the rare freedom of moving through the world without attention following him. For most of his adult life, people had known him through his responsibilities, his uniform, and the position he carried. They knew the title, the accomplishments, and the reputation. But very few people knew the person behind all of those things. Marcus valued those quiet moments because they reminded him of a simple truth. Before someone becomes a leader, they are first a human being. He believed that understanding people required seeing them without assumptions attached. That belief had guided him throughout his military career and shaped the way he approached every challenge. Not far away, Officer Daniel Brooks continued his patrol with the same dedication he brought every day. Daniel had learned that public service required focus and careful judgment. Every situation could be different, and every person had a story that might not be obvious at first. He believed his responsibility was to gather information, follow proper procedures, and make decisions based on what he could understand in the moment. As the paths of Marcus and Daniel finally crossed, neither man knew the significance of the encounter ahead. To Daniel, Marcus appeared to be another person going about his day. There was nothing visible that revealed the years of leadership, the difficult decisions, or the national responsibility that Marcus carried. To Marcus, Daniel represented another person doing a demanding job. He understood that officers often had to make quick evaluations and respond to uncertain situations. Marcus had spent his career working with people under pressure, and he knew that patience often created better outcomes than assumptions. The first moments between them seemed ordinary. The conversation began like many everyday interactions across America. There were questions, observations, and attempts to understand the situation clearly. But beneath the surface, there was a difference between what was visible and what was true. Daniel saw the person in front of him without knowing the history behind him. Marcus saw the officer in front of him without knowing what Daniel was thinking. Two people from completely different worlds were standing in the same place, each carrying responsibilities that the other could not see. The moment became a quiet example of how easily a person's identity could be reduced to what others noticed first. Marcus knew that appearances could never tell the entire story. A person's clothing, location, or circumstances could never reveal their complete journey. Daniel also understood that every decision carried consequences, but he was about to face a reminder that information was always more powerful than assumption. As the conversation continued, the atmosphere began to change. Not because Marcus demanded recognition, not because he revealed his position, but because the truth behind the ordinary appearance was slowly moving closer to the surface. The man standing there was not simply someone passing through a quiet day. He was a leader who had spent a lifetime serving others. And soon, the hidden story behind that quiet moment would begin to emerge. The moment of discovery began quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Nothing about the scene suggested that the truth behind Marcus Reynolds was about to change the entire meaning of the encounter. He remained exactly the same person he had been from the beginning. His voice stayed calm. His attitude remained respectful. He did not attempt to use his position as a way to influence the situation. For Marcus, the most important part of leadership was showing character when recognition was absent. Officer Daniel Brooks continued reviewing the details carefully. He understood that every situation required accuracy and patience. Experience had taught him that appearances could sometimes be misleading, and information was essential. Before reaching conclusions, as he gathered more details, a connection appeared that changed everything. The name Marcus Reynolds was not unfamiliar. It belonged to someone whose service had reached the highest levels of the United States Navy. The quiet man standing in front of him was not simply someone taking a day away from work. He was a 4-star admiral who had spent decades serving the country. For a moment, the meaning of the encounter shifted. The same person Daniel had been speaking with was suddenly seen through an entirely different lens. The calm confidence, the thoughtful responses, and the discipline Marcus carried all began to make sense. But Marcus did not change when his identity became known. He did not demand special treatment. He did not use his rank to create distance between himself and others. Instead, he continued speaking with the same respect he had shown from the beginning. That reaction revealed something more powerful than the title itself. It showed the kind of leader Marcus truly was. Daniel reflected on the moment and realized that the most important lesson was not about discovering a famous person. It was about understanding how quickly assumptions could shape an interaction. Before knowing Marcus's background, he had only seen a small part of the story. Now he understood that every person carried experiences, achievements, and responsibilities that might never be visible at first glance. Marcus had spent his career leading others, but he knew that leadership was not about expecting people to recognize his importance. It was about recognizing the importance of others. He believed that every person deserved respect before their accomplishments were revealed. The situation became a reminder that authority could appear in many different forms. Daniel wore a badge that represented public service. Marcus carried a lifetime of military responsibility that was hidden beneath ordinary clothing. Both men represented different kinds of service, but both had a responsibility to use their positions wisely. As the truth became clear, the focus shifted away from who had more authority. The deeper lesson was about how authority should be carried. Marcus showed that real influence came from humility. Daniel learned that true professionalism required an open mind. And in that quiet moment, the hidden story behind an ordinary encounter finally began to come into view. The truth about Marcus Reynolds had finally become known, but the most important part of the moment was not the rank attached to his name. It was the character he had shown before anyone knew who he was. Throughout the entire encounter, Marcus had remained patient, respectful, and composed. He had not relied on his position to influence the situation because he believed that true leadership was revealed through actions, not titles. Officer Daniel Brooks thought about everything that had happened and began seeing the moment from a different perspective. The person standing in front of him had carried a lifetime of responsibility that was impossible to see from the outside. Marcus was not defined only by the stars on his uniform or the title attached to his career. He was defined by the discipline, humility, and service that brought him there. Daniel realized that this lesson extended far beyond one encounter. Every day, people crossed paths with others whose stories remained unknown. A person's appearance, clothing, or circumstances could never reveal the complete journey behind them. Marcus understood this better than most because he had spent decades working with people from different backgrounds and experiences. He knew that respect was not something that should be given only after learning about someone's achievements. Respect was something every person deserved from the beginning. As the conversation continued, Marcus chose to focus on understanding rather than proving a point. He did not want the moment to become about his military rank. He wanted it to become a reminder that dignity should not depend on recognition. His approach reflected the same values that had guided him throughout his career. A great leader did not need constant acknowledgement. A great leader created trust through consistency and integrity. Daniel also began reflecting on the meaning of his own role. The badge he carried represented more than authority. It represented a responsibility to serve every person fairly. He understood that professionalism was not only about knowing procedures. It was also about having the wisdom to recognize when a situation contained more than what appeared on the surface. The encounter became a lesson in perspective. Marcus represented a form of leadership built through decades of service. Daniel represented the responsibility of protecting public trust at the community level. Their positions were different, but the values they needed were the same. Both required patience. Both required judgment. Both required respect for others. News of the encounter eventually reached people beyond that quiet location, but Marcus never wanted the focus to be on embarrassment or blame. He believed that meaningful change came from reflection and understanding. The goal was not to create division between people. The goal was to encourage better decisions and stronger connections. Daniel learned that the greatest professionals were not those who believed they could never be wrong. They were those willing to learn when new information appeared. Marcus showed that the strongest leaders were not those who demanded recognition. They were those who remained honorable even when nobody knew their name. And that was the lesson everyone carried forward. A person's true rank is not measured by the title they hold, but by the respect they show when no one knows their title at all. The impact of the encounter between Marcus Reynolds and Officer Daniel Brooks continued to grow, not because of a dramatic confrontation, but because of the quiet lesson it revealed. People across the community began discussing the importance of looking beyond appearances and understanding the responsibility that comes with authority. For Marcus, the attention was never the goal. He had spent his entire career avoiding unnecessary recognition and focusing instead on service. His position as a four-star admiral was not something he used to separate himself from others. It was a responsibility that reminded him every day that leadership was built on trust, patience, and humility. Marcus believed that the strongest leaders were not those who expected people to notice their accomplishments. They were the ones who continued doing what was right even when nobody knew their achievements. Officer Daniel Brooks also carried the experience with him. He continued serving his community, but the encounter changed the way he approached every interaction. He understood that every person he met had a story that might not be visible. Some stories involved years of sacrifice. Some involved personal challenges. Some involved accomplishments that would never be discovered unless someone took the time to listen. Daniel knew that his role required more than following procedures. It required awareness of the human being behind every situation. The leadership within the police department also reflected on the lesson. Police Chief Victoria Hayes understood that one interaction could influence how people viewed an entire organization. She believed that trust was built through consistency, accountability, and a commitment to treating people with fairness. The goal was not to focus only on one individual moment. The goal was to understand how every decision contributed to the relationship between law enforcement and the community. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to the responsibilities that had defined his life. Meetings, planning, and national duties continued, but the lesson from that quiet day remained with him. He knew that moments of misunderstanding could become opportunities for growth if people were willing to learn from them. Marcus never wanted the story to be about his rank. He wanted people to remember the deeper message. A person's value should never depend on whether others recognize their accomplishments. Respect should exist before the introduction, before the explanation, and before the discovery of any title. The situation also reminded people that authority came in many forms. Daniel carried the visible authority of law enforcement. Marcus carried the hidden authority of decades of military leadership. Both represented service, but both also understood that service required responsibility. True authority was not about being the most powerful person in the room. It was about using whatever influence a person had with fairness and wisdom. The encounter that began as a simple moment between two strangers became a reminder that every person deserves to be seen completely. The world often notices what is visible first, but the most important qualities are often the ones that remain hidden. And sometimes, the greatest lessons come from discovering that the person standing quietly nearby may have a story far greater than anyone imagined. The story of Marcus Reynolds and Officer Daniel Brooks remained a powerful reminder that the moments people remember most are often not the ones filled with noise or attention. They are the quiet moments that reveal character, challenge assumptions, and create opportunities for growth. For Marcus, the encounter was never about proving who he was. He had spent a lifetime serving his country, and he understood that true leadership was never measured by how many people recognized a title. It was measured by the choices a person made when recognition was absent. As a four-star admiral, Marcus had carried some of the highest responsibilities in military service, but he never allowed his position to separate him from ordinary people. He believed that every person deserved dignity before their accomplishments were known. That belief had guided him through decades of leadership, and it remained true even during a simple moment away from duty. Officer Daniel Brooks also carried a lasting lesson from the encounter. He continued his work with the same commitment to serving the community, but he carried a deeper understanding of the people behind every situation. He learned that experience was valuable, but humility made experience stronger. The best decisions came from combining knowledge with the willingness to recognize that there was always more to discover. The badge he wore represented responsibility, not superiority. It reminded him that public trust was earned through fairness, professionalism, and respect. Police Chief Victoria Hayes understood the importance of that message as well. She knew that organizations were defined not only by their policies but also by the actions of the people who represented them. Every interaction could either strengthen trust or create distance. That was why reflection mattered. Improvement came when people were willing to examine difficult moments honestly and use them as opportunities to become better. The lesson reached beyond one officer, one admiral, or one location. It became a reminder that people often carry invisible stories. A person standing quietly in a parking lot may have spent a lifetime serving others. A person wearing a badge may be carrying the responsibility of an entire community. The most important details about someone are not always the ones that can be seen immediately. Marcus never needed the world to know his rank in order to know his worth. Daniel never needed to forget his role in order to learn from the moment. Both men discovered that respect and accountability could exist together. Their experience showed that authority was not about demanding recognition. It was about understanding responsibility. It was about choosing fairness even when the full story was not yet visible. In the end, the lesson was simple but powerful. A uniform, a badge, or a title can show what someone does, but it cannot fully reveal who someone is. Character is revealed through patience, integrity, and the way people treat others when they have no reason to expect anything in return. Because the greatest measure of a person is not the position they hold. It is the respect they give before anyone knows the position they hold.